So thanks again, Joan Belgrave. We're here in Harlem, and I just wanted you to speak a little bit about the music business, particularly for African American women, and the way the industry tries to pigeonhole the talent, try to categorize what you do. Speak a little bit about that.
Well, I have never been one who allows that. People ask me, what do you sing? I said, music. I sing music. So whether it's gospel, whether it's blues, whether it's jazz, whether it's funk, whether it's pop, if it touches me, if I can tell a story by it, if I can feel it and make you feel it, then I'm going to sing it. I think that so many times the industry tries to pigeonhole us into a particular genre. Now, when my second album came out, when was that? That was 2000.
What's the name of it?
It's called Variations. And on that album, and I called it Variations because it had jazz, it had blues, it had gospel. It even had a country song on it that I wrote when I was in Tupelo, Mississippi, on my way to Memphis, Tennessee. And I was in the car and I had this country song. But, at the time it was Tower Records, those kind of record stores, and they didn't know where to put it, because it was all over the place. There was all kinds of stuff on it. Nowadays, we are not that way. We can sing whatever we want and we can define ourselves, which I've always defined myself.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that I loved about Marcus was that, and a lot of musicians, look at Kareem Riggins. Kareem is a killing jazz musician, but he's playing hip hop and whatever, making beats and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Marcus played, he was part of the Funk Brothers at Motown. Of course, they used jazz musicians. Barry talked about how jazz musicians were the strength and the backbone of the Motown sound.
Absolutely.
But Marcus played jazz, he played blues, he played classical, he played gospel, he played bar mitzvahs. And all of the students that came up around him were exposed to every kind of music. And I think that, you can't limit yourself. You can't limit yourself because there's a whole world out there.
Absolutely.
And you never know what you're going to find unless you open your eyes.
That's right. And now that we have, with social media, we have our own platform.
Absolutely.
And we can present our talent the way, in our voice. And I thought that was real important. Talk a little bit about how you use social media and how you build your platform and create your own distribution.
Well, I think that I'm not as good as some people think I am. My children have pushed me to do more on social media. And I'm kind of following their lead. But I think that if you just be real and get yourself out there, don't be afraid, don't be shy. People ask me, am I ever nervous? Am I ever nervous on the stage? I absolutely love what I do. I absolutely love it. And when I was married to my first husband, and I had 3 children, they're all grown now, 34, 36, 38 years old. But at the time, I didn't sing for 15 years. I didn't open my mouth because I was busy being a mom and a wife and doing what I needed to do. I felt that if I brought those children in the world, it was my responsibility to give them the foundation that they needed. So not singing for 15 years has given me, now it's just joy. I'm thankful every time I get to open my mouth. So am I nervous? No, because I'm happy, joyful to be singing. And I think that with vocalists, specifically with vocalists, they really try to pigeonhole you and make you be a certain specific genre. Musicians not so so much. You know, musicians can go and do this and go and do that, and nobody says anything.
Exactly.
But if you have a vocalist and they're like, oh, but she's not a jazz vocalist because she does da 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 da, you know, bump that. I say, don't be
Absolutely.
afraid. Don't be afraid to do you. Don't let anybody tell you how to do you. That's the way.
And it's so amazing. You know, you follow a long tradition of female vocalists who had taken time off and had come back. The first person that comes to mind is Alberta Hunter, who became a professional nurse, and it was many, many years later that she came back and became a huge star. And in my experience, I got to know a woman in Long Island named Miss Ruthie, who is a housewife, and all of a sudden, a few years later, she's Ruth Brown in Black and Blue on Broadway. So
look at Sheila Jordan.
And Sheila Jordan as well.
I mean,
Absolutely.
she didn't really focus on her career until she was in her 60s.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Sheila Jordan, she's my shero. You know, she's 93 years old. I mean, 92.
Yes.
And still traveling all over the world by herself. You know, the music is keeping her alive, and that's what it does. You know, it's our lifeblood. You know, I like to say it's not what we do, it's what we are.
Yes. And in your own hometown, there's a wonderful vocalist, Anita Baker, who is similarly situated in terms of leaving the career.
Again now.
Absolutely.
You know, she's coming back again now. Her children are in college, and you know, don't be afraid. People think they're too old. You're never too old for music.
That's right.
You're never too old for music. You know, music is one of those things that you can play into Mark. And I'm going to tell this. I haven't said this, but the day that Marcus Belgrave passed, we played his home. The day he passed, he played his home. So don't ever think that it's too late. Don't ever think that. Just do what touches your heart, and keep going. And it doesn't matter. Just keep going. Don't ever stop.
So thank you so very much, Joan Belgrave, and thanks for coming out to Harlem. And it was just great talking with you, and we're looking forward to speaking to you and seeing you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kevin.
And he had everyone else listening on the bandstand. You can walk into a jam session. I've seen this happen so many times. And everybody's, doing their thing, playing, showing out, and then Marcus walks up and all of a sudden everybody's playing as a unit. They're all listening to each other. And I think he got that because his father in the band that he was in would make him sit in different sections, not just in the brass section. He would sit in every section so he could hear what all the other instruments were doing. And so his ears were so big that he could hear what everyone was doing. And for him, I think, he used to tell me that the most important thing is that everybody played together. That we all played together. Not that, it's not about your solo, it's about how we all sound. And so I think that was him.
I have to add on sound. He made me pay attention to the sound of the drum because he made the trumpet sound like a flugelhorn. His sound was so warm and round. So yeah.
It's interesting. You could always tell when Marcus was in the club in Detroit, and you could tell when Marcus walked in. And you said, I saw that, heard that so many times that when the guys in the band saw that Marcus was in the club, everybody tightened up their ship. He had a real, it's almost a Svengali kind of power, particularly in Detroit.
But it wasn't just in Detroit. I mean, I saw it in New York, I saw it everywhere. I saw it in Los Angeles, I saw it in Chicago. I mean, because the musicians knew him. The general public may not have known him, but the musicians knew him. And so when he walked into the room, everybody just leveled up.
Right. Marcus, had a pretty low profile. The musicians knew that there was a giant living in Detroit, but he was not well known among the general public. And really what began to get his name out there a little bit more was when people like Jerry Allen and Kenny Garrett, who also came up under Marcus, and Bob, and others began getting famous in the 1980s and doing liner notes, or doing interviews and on recordings, and Marcus's name kept coming up. And I've heard from many people that that was when they first sort of became aware of Marcus, and that Marcus was part of the initial Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra in the trumpet section. So he had a little bit of a presence here in Detroit, in New York. But I'm curious from you guys, if you could, to what extent did Marcus help pave the way for you in terms of your later career, just in terms of making connections, or because you were close to Marcus, did you get treated differently by musicians in New York because they knew where you came from?
Well, I think Detroit in general has like a swag like that, you know. If you say you're from Detroit, people kind of like are either impressed or scared. Or both. So, yeah, you know, but definitely like, you know, just, you know, the association with Marcus is definitely a musician and somebody that the people that know, they know. So, but for me, like as far as my career, I know I just saw this house too, where I did this audition for Wynton Marsalis, and it was at 77 Bleecker Street. We just walked past it in search of fried chicken. And but I remember I had this audition, and you know, and Wynton kind of, I guess he dug me, but Marcus told me years later, he said, you know, Wynton called me and asked me about you. And he was asking all this personal, you know, stuff about me and what kind of guy I was, and about, you know, about my playing and different things, and definitely, you know, Marcus facilitated, you know, that part of my career, and which helped, you know, facilitated the rest of my career. So, yeah, I'm always thankful and appreciative for that.
And I'd like to add on that when I met Gregory Hutchinson, who recommended me to Betty Carter, and when Betty Carter called me, she asked me who did I play with in Detroit, and I mentioned Marcus Belgrave, and she said, I'll call you back to let you know about the gig. She called me back and said that sealed the deal. Like, Marcus Belgrave was a favorite of hers, so definitely had a weight.
And of course, Betty Carter was from Detroit too, as is Sheila Jordan, who we'll hear a little bit later tonight. The last thing, since we're on a deadline here and Joan's got to sing in about 10 minutes, the last thing I'd like to know is can you tell me what the greatest single lesson is that you took away from Marcus? I'm sure it's difficult to distill it down to just a few words, but in brief, when you think about Marcus's impact, legacy, what you took away, what's the lesson, the big lesson?
Go ahead. I just feel like Marcus is playing. He knew the history of the music, and he was stuck to the tradition, but he also was into the future of the music.